Hi there, I'm Joanne Ellison with Drawing Near to God Ministry, and I want to talk specifically to you women who are married. And we're going to look at the text in Ephesians 5:22, and Paul writes this: "Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord." Now let's just stop there for a moment, because that is really a hard thing to swallow. What does submission mean? What does it mean? I'll tell you what it does not mean. It does not mean be a doormat. It does not mean if you're abused, you stay in that situation. It does not mean that you are in harm's way. What it means is that you have a heart for your husband, to hear him, to be his helpmate, to come alongside him, to be united as one flesh. And submission in that sense is actually doing a beautiful dance of unity together. And so let's take a look at the rest of it. It says, "For a husband is head of the wife, even as," now here is the clincher, here is the key point, "even as Christ is the head of the church." So the idea here is that submission comes under the pattern, the biblical pattern of Christ as the head of the church. The church is his bride, and we are the bride of Christ. And in the natural, we are our husband's bride. And so when you look at the analogy, just as Christ is our head, our husband represents Christ. Now, doesn't that make it easier to understand? And we see it says, "Now as the church submits to Christ, wives should submit to their husbands." Husbands, now here's the most important part. I love this part. It says, "Husbands, love your wives." How? As Christ loves the church. Let me tell you something. That is a big, tall, whopping order. The husbands have much more responsibility than we do to love us in a way that Christ loves the church. And I understand your husbands can't hardly live up to that. And I know that many husbands try and some don't care. They don't care at all. But regardless, the perfect model is the model of the husbands loving the wives as Christ loves the church. And I have learned something, women, after 40 years of marriage. I've learned that if you love your husband to the best of your ability, something softens and shifts and changes in him. If you hold your tongue when you want to just bite his head off, and you look at him through kingdom lenses as God sees him, he responds to that kind of love. It's so easy to come back with, an argument and all, and I know this is just totally the idyllic, but I'm just trying to teach you the biblical worldview, what the Word says about it. Husbands, love your wives. As Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, your husband has a tall duty, a tall order, that he might sanctify her by the cleansing and the washing of water with the Word. His call is to love you in such a way that it's like Niagara Falls that pours over you. And listen, women, I totally understand you do not have a perfect husband. He does not do those things. You just do your part and ask the Lord to soften his heart, that together you can be in unity. And together you can be a helpmate to one another. In the same ways, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one hated his own flesh. Beloved women, I want to share something with you. I have learned that the more I love Jesus, the more I love my husband. And the more I love my husband, he responds to me differently. There's a different way to do life and marriage. And that's the biblical way, to follow your heart with Christ and let him lead you. I have a little book that I've written. It's a little devotional called Sitting at His Feet. And I would just suggest to you, it's just a little one it's about when you're struggling or angry or frustrated. You just pick up little pocket things, sitting at his feet, and it'll remind you of how Christ wants us to be Christ-like in our marriages.